Hello and welcome to our new series of minisodes with author and police advisor Graham Bartlett. Graham is a best-selling author and crime and police procedural advisor to fiction and TV writers. He was a police officer for 30 years and mainly policed the city of Brighton and Hove, rising to become a chief superintendent and its police commander. Graham started writing when he left the police in 2013 and, almost by accident, became a police procedural and crime advisor, helping scores of authors and TV writers, including Peter James, Mark Billingham, Ellie Griffiths, Anthony Horowitz, Ruth Ware, Claire McGowan and Dorothy Coomson, achieve authenticity in their drama. He also runs online crime writing workshops and courses with the Professional Writing Academy and delivers inputs to master's programmes at the University of Cambridge and the University of East Anglia, as well as at the Crime Writing Certificate programme at West Dean College. He lives in Sussex with his wife Julie and, variously, his 24-year-old triplets. His debut crime novel, Bad for Good, is out now, and not only is it a fantastic, gritty novel, it's also an absolute must-read for anyone looking to write in the police procedural genre.
That's absolutely right. And each episode of our minisodes will be around 10 minutes long, and we'll focus on how crime authors can ensure authenticity when writing about the police. So without further ado, please welcome the fabulous Graham Bartlett.
Hello Graham and welcome to our 5th minisode. Today we're talking about creating great police characters in our novels. Now we've talked in previous minisodes about the do's and don'ts of fictional policing, but what are your big no-nos for fictional police characters?
As a writer, I'm bound to say cliche. I'm bound to talk about the hard drinking, womanizing, workaholic, corner cutting senior officer. They wouldn't be in the job if they behave like that, let alone reach the rank that people tend to want to write them at. So that's really. But police officers carry a huge burden of stress and worry and hard work, and but you can show that in so many different ways. One of the things that I used to really kind of struggle with my staff when I was in the police is the amount of conflict they had around work and home in terms of childcare or other caring responsibilities. A lot of people had elderly parents and they were on a murder investigation, and they needed to get home because carers only came in 3 times a week and they needed to go and put their mum to bed. Things like that. You can make far more interesting characters by having real life problems. Money problems not created by gambling. I'm not saying there aren't gamblers, I'm not saying there aren't alcoholics, but money problems that are caused by people just falling into debt to make ends meet. Even quite senior people. So I think it's that falling into the tropes is something that people should really try and avoid. And the kind of the sort of militaristic behaviour between people, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I once got told that I was quite scary, and I said, well, I'm not scary, I'm a pussycat. Why do you think you're scary? They said, well, when you're cross with us, we know you never shout, you never raise your voice, you're always respectful, but you have a look in your eye that makes us absolutely turn to ice. And I thought, go on.
The Graham Bartlett look of ice. I love it.
I hope we never incur that.
I was just thinking the same thing.
I practice it in the mirror now. I don't know how to do it.
And your lead detective in Bad for Good is female, and there's certainly been a huge rise in female detectives, particularly in police procedurals over the last few decades. Do you think that women make for better fictional detectives? Back to what you're saying about their real life stresses and things and childcare. Do you think women have a bit more going for them?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And some people say you're mad as a debut novelist, writing your protagonist in a different gender from you. But I really wanted to get into that, so some of those kind of conflicts and tensions. And in writing Joe Howe, I took a huge amount of advice from former colleagues who were of a similar rank to me, doing a similar job to me, because I knew what it was like to as a white, straight, middle class man, to get to and keep the job of a police commander in a big city. I had no idea what that was like for a woman, and I learned so much about it, and I wanted to reflect that in the book. So with Jo, we have this. There's not kind of huge sexism, with her, against her. There's not kind of over, jealousy that you've been promoted because you're a woman kind of thing. Mm-hmm. It more comes from the inside with her. Her husband Darren is a journalist who travels, and she sort of defaults to picking up the childcare responsibilities when he's away. They never have the conversation, and then she feels bad because am I a bad mum? And I'm a bad police officer, and I'm a bad mum today, and all of those things. And she kind of carries that really, really heavily, and it gives a huge imposter syndrome in both of her lives. So I think there is a lot more with women. I think there's a less of a tendency to fall into the tropes that you would with the man. So I think the writer has to think harder to make them realistic. And nowadays, thankfully, it reflects reality more. That thankfully there are far more senior women officers than there were 10, 15 years ago, and so it should be. They're often cleverer, more astute, and more resilient than us men are.
Good to hear. What do you think the future holds for police characters in fiction? I mean, is there a particular type of character you'd love to see more of? I mean, possibly you've sort of partially answered that already, but
yeah, I think certainly more diversity in that level. Not just gender diversity, but sexual orientation, race. I think that needs to be reflected more. I think also the transient nature of policing now. When I joined, everybody served for their full 30 years, got their pension at the end of it, and moved on. Nowadays, that's rare, to be honest. I mean, a lot of people will leave the police after sort of 10 years, go and do something else, come back to the police. It's far more like a normal sort of work life for people. That it's not that job for life. And a lot of people, there's direct entry schemes now, so you can come in. I don't necessarily agree with them, but you can come in as an inspector or as a superintendent, and that brings some huge challenges for the individual and also for the organisation. So I think that just reflecting that kind of change in the demography of police officers, and also their attachment to the job. I mean, I think that's really interesting, because honestly, that it's rare for people to fulfill their full service. That's a difficult thing to say.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I didn't know that, actually. That's fascinating.
Must be such a different dynamic to come in at a higher level, having not served and done. I was always under the impression you had to start, no matter when you joined, you started at a PC level, and had you
used to up until about 10 years ago, and then inspectors and superintendents. And I know a lot of direct entry superintendents, and they're really good people. They're very clever people. They bring in some fabulous sort of skills and perspectives from outside. But the difficulty that I have is their operational experience to manage some of the most critical incidents. When I was managing those, I was kind of drawing on every ounce of my previous experiences and service, and also the operational credibility I built up during the years. So if I was asking a team of officers to go and do something that was quite tricky or hazardous, at least I knew that they could look to me and go, well, actually, yeah, well, you know what you're talking about. I mean, they'd have to do it anyway, but it just creates a little bit more confidence.
Yeah.
And that's not about the individuals, because the individuals are mainly in it for the right reasons, and are, as I say, very, bring a very special perspective to policing, which is needed. I'm more in favour of very fast track promotion, so that people are, talent is identified at an early stage, and people are given almost hot house that experience, so they can move through to those very senior ranks much quicker than in my day. I would never have been the talent that they spotted.
Oh no,
I'm sure you would have been
there eventually.
Oh no, that's really interesting though, and as you say, that can, if writers can start to incorporate some of these developing trends in their fiction, that's going to make their work even more authentic, isn't it?
Yeah.
But sadly, that's all we've got time for today. So thank you for listening to our Minisode with police advisor and author Graham Bartlett. And thank you, Graham, for sharing your expertise with us today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Graham. And if you haven't already listened, then do have a listen to Graham's full In Suspense interview on policing for authors, which is Series 6, Episode 7.
So that's it for now. It's goodbye from Graham. It's goodbye from Lauren, and it's goodbye from me. Bye.